Welcome to a very long-awaited next episode of Behind the Style. Huge apologies. Not been around for a while because been very busy. So obviously that and my special guest today, I needed to get him in the same city as me, same country. An amazing stylist. An interesting choice, some may think, because a lot of stylists aren't actually friends, let alone friendly, let alone chit-chat the amount that we do on a daily basis. His amazing clients include the amazing Hannah Waddingham and Tom Daley. Please welcome to Behind the Style, the fabulous James Yardley.
That's quite an opening. I'm very disappointed.
So excited
No
we're
pressure.
actually in the same country,
Yes.
same city.
It's been a while since we were actually in the same
I know.
place.
Where have you flown in from today?
Recently with Hannah, it's just been back and forth from...
LA.
Yes, which is great for the jet lag, but...
Really?
Yeah.
And how do you deal with the jet lag? I know what I do, but what do you do?
Well, I feel like you've got it down better than I have, and I think New York's more of a brutal... Because it's not like you get on the plane and you kind of back in London before you know it. Whereas with LA, at least you can kind of settle in and fall asleep.
Yeah.
But I'm a melatonin person as well.
Me too.
Solid.
Tablets or gummies?
No, tablets. That's serious business.
Hey.
That's what I want to...
You probably can't do this from LA, but I do this thing now that I just don't eat at all on the plane. And I think that helps.
I've heard that if you don't eat and drink alcohol, it helps.
Yeah.
But I tend to do both.
I mean, it's a 12-hour flight for you, whereas
Yeah.
me it's like 6.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's not as bad.
I also feel like a bit of alcohol and melatonin.
Works
and I'm
wonders.
lost. Like, that's it. It's me snoozing.
So to kick off, James, I ask every guest this quickly. Best part of job, worst part of job, and you can do either first.
Well, I'm going to do the budgets as the worst job because I feel worst part of the job. I feel like it's got generally worse as time's gone, and that's across the board. Like in music, celebrity, in terms of TV, actors, any of those things. I think the budgets have just got tighter, but we're still expected to provide the same level of service. And I think the best part is going to be travel because I think I didn't used to travel a lot. And Hannah's kind of opened up those doors to sort of like America, which I had very loosely done through editorial, but now it's
Full on.
and the red carpets and everything else. Like I enjoy that part.
Amazing. What do you think you'd be doing though if you weren't a stylist?
So I always wanted to be a journalist, but like
Really?
an actual, just like an investigative, like newspaper journalist. I know as well, and I had sort of like through high school and my and my A levels, I'd always had this idea that's what I was going to do.
Okay.
I fell into this by accident.
So tell us, for anyone that's watching that thinks, I'd actually really like to be a stylist, what was your routine? How did you do it? What was the thing that like triggered you that was like, that's what I'm going to do?
Well, I feel like I was the last of a generation. I don't know if it still happens, but the last of a generation where you were asked to work free completely. I don't know if people still get asked to do it, but with internships. So I basically had some spare. I was a maitre d' at a hair salon, which is hilarious. So I literally used to come out with like coffees and teas, and that paid my rent. And my rent was so little at the time, it was like $300 a month.
In London?
In London. I was like out in Stratford, but this was before they built the Olympics and everything. So it was an area that like people didn't really live in so much. And it was classed as further out, and even though it was like 20 minutes. So anyway, it was a maitre d', and then someone asked me, they were like, oh, they posted on Facebook, which tells you that in itself how long ago this was, if anyone would be interested in interning at Attitude magazine.
Okay.
And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I went along. And then that's basically the start of like, I think I was meant to be there 6 weeks. And I was there, again, I don't think you can do this with internships anymore. I was there 6 months.
Wow.
Like 3 to 6 months. Like paid stuff started coming
Yeah.
towards the end. But yeah.
And what do you think was it about being there that really, was it the fashion side of it, or was it the celebrity side of it? Or...
Well, it was weird at the time as well. Do you remember Loaded magazine? So Loaded was owned by the same publisher that had Attitude. And I remember I worked across quite a few magazines. I think there might have been the travel one. I can't even remember now. But I remember with Attitude, I enjoyed just the fashion. Like, you would quite literally, like it was a small team, and I always remember the editor would be like, just go on catwalking.com, I think was the word, it's gone now, but you'd like, and pick from Vivienne Westwood, and like pick the 3 looks that you like and send it over, and they'll send the one that's available. And it was literally
Gosh,
like
that sounds easy.
Oh, it was a dream, like in comparison to now.
Yeah.
And but it's like, you know, if you shoot for like GQ now or
Yeah.
Official, you just send out the email and they're gonna loan. It was like that with Attitude, and the fashion was quite well respected. I think it's not so much anymore, but then I think that's because the publisher for magazine now has kind of cut it down, whereas back then it was a real big portion of the magazine. So I enjoyed the menswear. I enjoyed dressing models. I mean, they were gorgeous men all the time, basically, which, you know, what's not to love? And from there, I remember kind of infiltrating my way into the fashion director's main job, which was, ironically, Nicole Scherzinger.
Really?
Yes, and Nicole's one of the first people I worked with as an assistant, and I loved her. And then there was Kylie Minogue, he did JLS, he did the Saturdays, he did someone else, I can't remember. But Nicole was the first job I ever did.
Amazing.
Yeah, so...
And then from Attitude, what did you think? I'd like to be a fashion editor, or how did that transition happen?
I remember... Oh, it was so difficult to explain, because unless you're kind of there in the situation, it sounds like very dog eat dog, but basically as girl bands and boy bands come to an end, they all go in different positions in terms of, like, some of them are like right out the gates and what they want to do next, and some of them kind of hang back a little bit. But the Saturdays were my old boss's main client, and I could feel I was always closest to Vanessa and Rochelle in the Saturdays, just because we spent so much time with them. You'd be in like a car going to the middle of nowhere up north
For hours.
Yeah, for hours, and so you got really tight with them. And I was tight with all of them, but Rochelle and Vanessa in particular, I was really tight with. And I remember we kind of, as they started to break up, like, Rochelle got a different management, and I remember Rochelle being like, you're coming with me. And I think, one, because she knew that I would basically just be hers, because I didn't have any other clients, and 2, I kind of got the grasp of where she wanted to go at the time. So that was kind of, it was all very organic. Like, I never felt like anything was planned.
That's nice, actually.
Yeah, until like a year later, where I realised that if Rochelle was to get rid of me or change direction, which inevitably, you know, a lot of clients do change direction, I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to need to start looking at this as an actual career and a move. So that was how that happened. Yeah.
And then from there, where did you go?
I remember when I had Rochelle, some really big things happened, and I remember thinking, oh, I want to continue this. So I started approaching other clients, like Tess Daly was one, which is how she ended up being like my client for like 9 years, and then Tom Daley. And so like I infiltrated different managements and did that kind of thing to sort of make my way in.
Because your client, you do notice from your clients do stay with you, which not everybody.
Yes.
You can tell sometimes people just have like a one hit with somebody and then they move on.
I'm
so
quite
you're
proud of
obviously.
that, yeah.
What do you think your qualities are, apart from that you're a good stylist? But like, as we all know, it's not just about being a good stylist or having style. It's not just about that. What do you think? What do you think is it about you that people want to keep you close?
I'm gonna say that I'm dedicated.
Yeah.
They always know I'm not one of those stylists that turns up with one look. Yeah. I'm one that turns up with rails of things. Yeah. And also, like, a lot of my girls have never been, some of them are sample size, but I think the girls that are maybe slightly taller or curvy or whatever, they appreciate someone that's
hustles.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that those women in particular, and some of the men, but mostly the women, have done so many editorial shoots where they've turned up and been given samples of this and felt crap about themselves and that sort of thing, that when they finally meet a stylist who accommodates them, there's that. I also pride myself on not throwing someone under a bus just to do a look that I like.
Yeah.
And there's been so many looks. I mean, you'll probably empathise with this. There's been so many looks over the years, which you set your heart on.
Yeah.
Literally, that face is basically sums it up. And you have this, like, you envision it down to, like, accessories and maybe how they do their hair and makeup, and then, like, you go to do it on the day.
Doesn't work, or they're just not on board,
Yeah.
and then some other bastard does it a week later, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, that's groundbreaking!" And you're like,
so
"I had the idea."
I had a dress not long ago that was made for someone, and it was for one of the awards shows in America. I was so in love with the dress, and it didn't work. We went with the backup, and then that dress ended up on a model at Cannes, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's incredible!" And in my mind, I was like,
I saw it first.
Scream, like, yeah. And it was also not as well accessorized as I would have done it as well. So there's those things, but I think I've kept the clients through
hard work.
Yeah, hard work, and I think that transparency of just being like honest. I think a lot of stylists are. God, this is going to sound controversial. I think a lot of stylists are out for themselves.
Totally.
And I do think keeping the client means you have to put the client first.
Totally.
Which I think is how I've kept so many of them for so long.
And I think a lot of people do just want like a vibe. I did a radio show the other day, and I think I mentioned this. It's like a lot of stylists, and I can see it when people are doing it. To your point of like not putting the client first, they put themselves first. They just want a viral moment.
Oh.
And it's like wrong client, wrong place, wrong time.
Yes.
Like it's not about that. It's actually about the person's career. And I think that's what people forget sometimes. You and I are booked to make someone get more work.
Oh, 1000%.
Ultimately, or
not
keep it,
to like,
not to be like, what the heck is that?
But
for good or bad, you know?
Yeah, there's like this misconception that if you put yourself in front of the camera, as in if you slam yourself in front of the camera, that you will make yourself into the same as the celebrity, the talent. And in a lot of ways, like for example, I could only use Chris Appleton as a really good example here. I think Chris Appleton is the kind of, and because he's not a stylist, I think I can say even more so, I think his relationship with Kim Kardashian is so authentic.
Yeah.
That what it's done is like it's put him to the front, but in a way that like she champions it. He's talented on top of it.
Yeah.
He genuinely seems to know the business and how he goes around it. Whereas like other people are just so keen to shove something on TikTok or like.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's hard sometimes that people get lost in the middle.
The hype.
Yeah, the hype, exactly.
The hype. Now, do you prefer, because obviously you have like a really famous male client and a really famous female client. What do you prefer?
I think I always, because of where I started, I love menswear, and the growth of menswear now is so
amazing.
It's so different from when I started. And I always remember like we would style a lot of straight men for our attitude. And there was always sort of like a boundary of maybe what they might even want to do themselves, but how they perceive themselves as a straight guy, public eye, and that's kind of gone now. That's thrown out the window. So if that's gone as it is, I think menswear is more fun, and therefore any stylist enjoys, I think, playing around with their actual job. But there's nothing quite like when you do a red carpet. Yeah. And I mean, Hannah's a gift because she's 6'2" in heels. And, like, that body is insane, especially when we're, like, corseted and, like, the length's right and, like, the jewelry's good. And, like, her posture, it's like, I'm like this. And she's like, I need, like, that gift of, like, a talent that walks out into a bed.
She's a star.
Yeah, but it's the same with Ashley. Like, they're one of a kind.
They are.
And that's a real gift.
Yeah.
In that sense.
The confidence as well.
And I feel like it's something that, like, not everyone has. So I don't know if it's... I think I love my menswear and I love the editorial. I've never done a women's wear editorial. I realised that.
Really? You need to.
Yeah, it's never occurred.
Never happened.
Where I've done so many menswear editorials. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. What could you do differently if you could do all of it again? Are there any times where you're like, I wouldn't have made that decision?
I wish I'd maybe hung around in the magazine industry a bit longer. Because I think that a title really excels you.
I agree.
In a way that I...
Oh, yes.
In a way that I sometimes get snubbed for people that used to be at a magazine, and then I see this is what kills, and this is incredibly bitchy.
Go on, say it.
Well, I would say this to anyone as well. Sometimes there are certain stylists that are favoured by publicists, especially in this city, in London. It doesn't happen so much in America, I find. But they are put forward based on where they came from, and then you see them do a client that maybe isn't the sample size, and it's a catastrophe.
Good luck with that, honey.
And in my mind, I'm like, you should have booked someone who actually knows how to do that kind of woman, as opposed to... has thrown on look 22 from blah blah blah. Yeah,
I agree, and I think a lot of people don't realise who are looking from the outside in that if your client isn't a model's proportion, which quite frankly is quite an unrealistic
Yes.
body, weight, shape, whatever you want to call it. If you don't fit those measurements, you have a big problem. And I don't think a lot of people realise that it cuts out a lot of choices.
Oh, I'm going to say cuts out at least 90%.
I totally agree with you.
And I think that's actually something that still really bugs me to this day, because I was thinking about this the other day. There's been so many designers that have showcased sort of different shaped women, sized women on runways, and then they just don't have the samples afterwards. And I'm like, so it was all for show.
Or they don't want that person.
And that winds me up, and that goes hand in hand with watching these stylists who don't know how to do these kind of girls.
Yeah, I agree.
The worst is if I see someone who is, I'm really going in on this. The worst is if I see someone who has a really petite girl.
Yeah.
And they haven't even really known how to make a sample size smaller, which is in a lot of ways quite easy.
Well, it's kind of easy, yeah.
Yeah, but so many of them don't really do it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no tailoring.
And
I love tailoring is also my big
thing.
Corsetry and tailoring.
Nothing beats a good corset.
There's just so many amazing corsetry.
There is.
As well now.
Yeah.
It's not just limited to these sort of 3 or 4.
I totally agree. What do you think? Is there one thing that people who might have been watching your career what is there that people don't know about James Yardley?
I think there was never, I've got it. So, I don't particularly consider myself that successful.
Don't be silly.
But I think that's also that British thing of being
yes.
But when I think about it, there was never a plan. I just worked hard and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
Yeah, I don't think... And also, no one ever helped me. I feel like a lot of the way has been me knocking on every door. And ironically, there was a photographer I used to work with who's gone now, Joseph Sinclair, who was one of my favourite people.
He was an amazing photographer.
He could always capture a moment no one else I felt. But I always remember Joseph would put me forward for every actor and actress that came along. And I would always get passed up for these other people that came from magazines and whatnot. And it was fine. I bear no sort of bitterness for it, because I said to Joseph, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to look for it anymore. I just don't want to. I don't have the fight in me. I'm happy to do these commercial gigs. And then literally 3 months later, I got an email. I was on a terrible first date. I got an email being like, there's this actress... she's been around a long time, and she's an incredible talent, but she's not won anything, and she's in the show in America. No one in the UK had heard of Ted Lasso.
So funny.
And they were like, and 2 people have passed her up already, which I love this story because I know who passed her up now.
Hysterical.
Such joy. And
it's when those people who have been passed up, then after a year of seeing what you're doing, then they try and get back in. It's like, oh, no.
Well, they've tried.
Of course they have.
One,
yeah.
And it was so funny because they were like, do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, she looks like great fun.
Yeah.
And then, I think organically, the next 2 nights, she won the Critics' Choice Award, and then it just kept going up for her. And she's also incredibly loyal, so she's kept me with her, and I think I've never let her down as well. So, but I think that's what people probably wouldn't sometimes realise is that I think it's just going with your gut and really giving it all. There's some days, and you all know this, I mean, you travel even more than I do. There's some days where you just don't want to do it, but you have to do it because you love it.
But also, I think when I see people fighting too hard, manipulating too hard, it doesn't work. I feel for me, in a sort of similar way to you, my life's gone in very different directions, good and bad. And I feel now that, as you say, I work hard, I show up on time. Not a lot of people are ever on time. I'm always 15 minutes early. No one else seems to have got that memo, ever. I used to work for somebody back in the day. I'm not going to mention her name.
I love stuff like this.
If people were late,
right,
she docked their day rate.
I love that.
If I did that now, I'd be taken to court.
And you'd be cancelled.
Everyone's late.
Yes, everyone's late.
Everyone is late. And I think, for me, I've always shown up I've always done the best that I can do. Go to bed every night knowing that I couldn't have done any more. And I just feel like I have been divinely guided in my life.
Yeah.
And I think when you see people with sharp elbows, pushing people out of the way, playing dirty,
which there's a lot of.
there's a huge amount of that goes on in London, actually, as well as in America.
There's something about here that
Bitchy.
Yeah, but it's very bitchy. But also, it's funny. I've never been so disliked since I got Hannah. And
Interesting.
It's watching people's reactions to it is fascinating. But as a designer once said to me, well, not long ago, she said to me, she went, "The thing is, no one saw you coming. They always counted you out." So
Do you think that's because you were more sort of like, as people see as commercial? Like,
Totally
I see
commercial.
commercial as great because commercial basically means that you make money.
Yes. Well, you don't.
Like, cool doesn't make us money.
Look at what happened in the strike. In reality, the people that were so broke in the strike were the cool people.
The cool people.
I find it ironic as well. There's been a lot of mention of certain things over the past sort of 18 months in terms of like setting up things. And it was people that really just wanted other fashion people to be part of it. And they've realised in order to actually grow what they're trying to set up with a massive amount of people, they have to invite the commercial ones in. And that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
I was definitely always counted out.
I've never been part of the cool gang. People are
Neither
often
have I.
like, oh, you're really cool. No one cool has ever wanted me part of their group.
Which is wild though, because you're so...
Never been part of the cool
as
gang.
well.
Don't get invited to things.
Would you go if you were invited though? Because this is a terrible story. I have Emmanuel, who was at Dior and is now at Fendi. He's one of my favourite PRs in the world. No one works harder than him, and he's incredibly dedicated. And I remember every time we did something with Dior, with Tom Daley, he'd be like, "Come to the show." And I'd be like,
No, and then you didn't go.
Because I'm just not that person. I watch it on Vogue.com now.
Yeah.
And I go through every look and I save my favourites. I'm very dedicated in that
But
way.
I think that's to your point, though. You're doing it for the clothes. You're
Yes.
doing it for the fashion. You're not
Yes.
doing it for you.
No, I
because
don't
you
care if
don't
it
really
sees me
care
or-
if you're there or not. I'd like to go for the experience.
Yes, yeah.
Like, I'd love to go to a Chanel show.
Yes.
Before I'm like 95 and completely decrepit in a
You
wheelchair.
might be, but
like
90 at Chanel is very chic.
I don't nearly there. I don't want to go for the thing,
Yeah,
but
you
I
wanna
want to
go
go
see the
to
clothes and
experience
experience,
it
yeah.
because I think it would be an amazing thing
It's one of
to
the
experience.
Very last designers as well that really puts on a full show.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing it more with like Margiela and things like that, but like Chanel really.
But yeah. But that's the reason that I still do it is the love of the love of clothes, the love of fashion. Anyone who's watching, we do have quite a few assistants, people who want to assist, people who want to get their sort of foot in the door. What would your advice be to a fashion assistant, a stylist assistant? Because I know you've had somebody for a long time, haven't you?
I've had Ollie for years.
Which shows you're a nice human being.
Well, I'm one of those stylists that believes that assistants should. I think you should work from the ground up. I think there's no point coming in, sort of with an expectation of going into a more senior role as an assistant without doing the things like the returns, the reach out emails, stuff like that. I believe that assistants should always be paid properly as well.
I agree.
Which is my big thing. So Ollie's, for example, like whenever we've done jobs with Ollie, and the budget's allowed, I've flown into America with me, and he's always been on a higher day rate, and his accommodations, all of the basic things. And I think that's really important.
But he's earned that, right?
He's totally earned, and also the clients love him because he's earned that relationship
Yeah.
as well. My advice for people starting, the turning up on time thing is so important. It's just a key thing that shows respect. I think never saying no, obviously within reason, but as in like, I think approaching everything with coming from a place of yes attitude is brilliant in any job, especially fashion, especially because it's so cutthroat and there's so many people wanting to join it. And I think knowing your worth, I think knowing like that you shouldn't be. I really hate the idea of like where we came from, the idea that people were on set for like 15, 16 hours without being paid. I think, knowing that you should only be there for so many hours and that you should be on, if you're interning at least, your lunch and travel is paid,
Yeah.
all of those different things. I think that would be my advice. And I think also, like, if you love it, if you genuinely love it, it's the keep hustling. You just have to keep hustling.
Yeah, I agree.
Not every day is going to be great. Sometimes most days will be terrible.
Yes.
Because they are.
They are a lot of the time.
You know, like I literally came through the door.
We do have a little moan, don't we?
God, we have rants. But like I came through the door today and I'm like, you know, starting the conversation with, the samples are lost at Stansted. Then like, you know, those are the days, day in, day out.
The day in, day out.
You've got to. Never mind like where you start off. So the hustle of it, I think, is really important.
Yeah, keep hustling.
Yes, keep hustling.
That's the name of my game for sure.
I think people appreciate it as well. And I think also, like, interestingly, when I don't know, like, how when you joined the agency, that was one of the things that Kent and Ruby liked about me, was that I'd been doing it, I think, for a while. And they had then, I mean, I'd only really come to vision for Kent because of Hannah, and then Tom, obviously, as well. They'd seen that kind of thing of, like, who is this kid? Like, where did he come from? Even though I'd been doing it for a while. Like, but the work was always exemplary. Like, I pride myself on, even if you perhaps don't like the look I put out, the execution is flawless.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Well, there's a quote years ago from Marc Jacobs to Victoria Beckham when she first started out, because a lot of people gave her a lot of crap.
Still do.
Exactly. And I think Marc Jacobs said something, I don't have it word for word, but Marc Jacobs said, whatever you put out, as long as you put out excellent work, they can't critique you on that. They can critique you on the fact that you're a Spice Girl, or that, you know, the dresses might be X, Y, and Z, but if the quality of the dresses is great, then you can hold your head up higher.
Yeah,
and that's how I think
I agree. I agree, because I think sometimes, you know, there's all these sites now that sort of, they put everyone's work up, you know, check the tag or whatever, and people can now vote, and people say some really mean comments underneath. And it's like, I was thinking the other day, God, it'd be really odd to do a job that you just did a job and then you just finished the job, and if it was right internally, it was right. And if it, like, every single look that you and I do gets judged.
Yeah.
Which is quite a big thing.
And it's like, I think
from people
like
that
200,000 followers.
And
which is like,
you sometimes, I never, like, I have commented a few times on people, like I did an editorial for Vogue Italia and somebody said something really rude underneath, and I basically like just showed them the brief, like in full.
Like, look at this.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people don't realise the work, the decisions, that, as you say, but then at least if you always create something that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, it's the fact that the client's happy. That's my main thing. It's not whether the population is happy. It's whether the client's happy, because ultimately they're the ones paying you.
100%. It's interesting because some of the stylists I have realised some of the stylists are answering back on check the tag, and some of them are really aggressive, which I kind of love, because I'm like, you give them like what for? Like, you worked on that for 6 weeks. Like, you tell this stranger in the middle of nowhere like where to. It. Because I think, in fairness, I think sometimes like you need to vent that to someone anyway. If they're like shouting into a void, why not shout back?
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, people just don't get what goes into this. It's weeks and weeks of work, like
weeks.
Especially like the award season is relentless, and you finish one and you get to the next, and they're so enjoyable. I mean, actually, my goals in life were to do the award seasons.
Yeah.
That's all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud I did them. So even if I never do them again, I can say I've done them.
Yeah.
The work that goes into them is like
ridiculous.
And that's where I find like the London stylists don't even. This is going to sound again really bitchy, but a lot of the London stylists, because it's a smaller part, there's more people. They're so busy being bitchy over this side of it, when what they don't realise is actually when you get into the main game, which, let's be honest, it's a bit like Game of Thrones, when you actually get into the main game over in America,
the main arena.
It's just like when you get to that main arena in America, it's like none of that bitchiness matters, because it's more about like what designer you can secure and who will make you custom, because everyone's in custom.
Everyone wants custom.
And then, you know, what jewelry pieces you can get, because at the end of the day, everyone's got some sort of ambassadorship, and like what pieces are left. Like, that's the real game.
That's the real game.
Not the stuff over here.
You're so right. I'm so glad you said that, because it's so true.
When you get there in America, so daunting. LA was so daunting the first time I ever got there.
So hot, let's face it, compared to
so daunting.
British summertime out here in our coats.
I'm not gonna lie, having a boyfriend that now lives in America is quite like I'm quite excited just to go
Quite
back
nice,
to sit
just
in the
for the
sunshine.
sun.
But yeah, it's a different game over there.
Yeah,
in that sense. And
I
the
totally
times,
agree. I totally agree. And I also think it just makes you... I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm not going to make a massive excuse, because I hate it when people are like, I didn't have time. That's one of the reasons it has taken me since the Met Gala to do this, another episode, because I've been busy,
But, like,
too
look
busy
at Look
working.
at the Met as well. That's like, and that's
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a different beast in itself to
It is.
all of the others.
It is.
So I mean,
It is.
I'm surprised you're not in therapy after a Met Gala. It's so much work.
I know. I just sit in a cold room on my own for a few hours.
You have so many different clients, all
Yeah.
different requirements as well,
Different requirements.
across the globe.
Yeah. Do you know what I think it is, though? I've been very successful in my life, and I've been very unsuccessful in my life.
Right, yeah.
And I've seen both sides of the coin, and it can stop. Literally. And I think if you are lucky enough to be continually offered work
Yeah.
and paid to do something that
Yeah.
you like doing, you've got to keep saying yes.
You-
Because I don't know how long this is going to last for. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that so that people are like, oh no, you're really good at what you... Fine.
But on the flip
But I
side of
have
it-
also done something in my life, other things that I was relatively good at as
Yeah.
well. And reasons outside of my control, or life, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
just didn't continue on that trajectory.
It's such a roller coaster, especially this industry, because even from personal circumstances to the strikes to COVID, that roller coaster of doing the clients is wild. But it's interesting because I know that you do the similar thing to me in certain things. You always hope to obviously get budgets covered and things to fly all over the place. But even for example, award ceremony shows, I've flown myself out to fittings in New York and stuff. Not because anyone was covering it, but because of the love of wanting to go to the next level, to produce the next amazing work. And I think that's also part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You
Reinvesting in yourself.
Yeah, riding that wave, you have to to believe in yourself to go that.
And also there's 1,000 other people waiting if you don't show up. I think that's the thing.
I thought that when I did my Emmys dress this year. I think it's my favourite I've ever
That
done.
was stunning, by the way.
Thank you. I'm really... It's funny, it's in the office now. But I look at it sometimes and I'm like... Because for me, Marquesa Georgina Chapman is one of the nicest people I've ever met. And so talented watching her work as well.
So talented.
But she's so sort of cemented with red carpet fashion. It's sort of especially with the Oscars and the Emmys and everything else. But I remember being in her studio in New York after they'd agreed to do custom for the Emmys. And I remember thinking, oh, God, how lucky am I to be doing this? And I think also that's the other part, just keeping that in your mind, how hard you work and how lucky to get to that position. Because like you say, if it's like this going forward,
and also sometimes people just say, no, we can't dress them, and you're like, okay, next. And I think that's when people actually want to do it and make custom, it's it's a gift. It really is.
Such a gift.
And it's such an enjoyable process as well. I do really enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of you're so in it. When you're doing that stuff, and it feels just so sort of how many people can say that they get to help, co-design in a lot of cases, a dress from the ground up, from the sketch to the fabric to the fittings to the jewellery to the shoes to
everything.
Seeing it go out on the carpet. Customs are real. It's an absolute boy, but it's the best thing in the world.
It is. It so is. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy that we managed to get this chat before we both fly off from
depart again.
Heathrow Terminal 5.
I'm surprised we've never bumped into one another then.
I know. I saw Hannah once while we were waiting for our luggage.
Yes. They were always, me and her are always in Terminal
But you weren't there. So I just sort of admired her from afar.
Well, she's very sort of because she's got a child. Literally, as soon as she's done on a job, I will say her dedication to it is wild. She's on that plane, red eye out. Her dedication is, whereas because I've got now a boyfriend in LA, it's I'll try and
you can stay a bit longer. No, I'm generally I generally go the next day.
Yes.
Just because I don't want to have it at the back of my head about getting to an airport in time. Do you know what I mean? I don't like having that extra added anxiety.
Yeah.
And also there's always something that needs to be returned or hasn't been collected or lost.
Lost is the word that gives me the most anxiety.
I know. Losing my luggage is... I've got double air tags in everything. I get off the plane and I'm like, oh God, I forgot about this fear. Hate it.
I've changed all my suitcases to colourful suitcases.
Yeah.
And I know this sounds bizarre, but...
Everyone's got a black Toomey suitcase otherwise, haven't they?
Well, I'm really lucky because Antler have looked after
Yes,
me for a while.
me too.
Literally, I'm like bloke.
Best suitcases.
Literally, they do the best
They
suitcases.
do. And they're light.
Yes, and as soon as they break, they replace them as well. But I recently spoke to them and I was like, can I get rid of my black ones and replace them with colourful ones?
What colour did you go
I
for?
went with the maroon.
Oh,
the burgundy.
nice.
Well,
so it stands out.
Yeah, well,
Clever.
literally, I was stood there at LAX and I got a full set of them and literally they were like, because you know LAX, it's like there's two.
Yeah, so I run round between them. I'm like...
this, especially if you're alone, it's like Challenge Annika. But literally...
that was just me.
And also it's this moment of like pure anxiety.
Which pea shooter is it going to come down?
The worst is if one comes on one and the other one comes on the other because you're like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yes! No one realises this.
Yeah.
Anyway, the maroon's a good colour.
Good colour.
Because I quite like that green.
Hannah got the green.
Did she?
Yes.
I
And
was
then
quite...
I saw it and I was like, if you don't want them,
I'll have that. No, I got the black, which was a bad decision. Well, not a bad decision, because so chic, but I've got these really good... Actually, the women from British Airways commented how nice they were the other day. I've got these things from Amazon that you get your name printed, and they're can't think of the word. They're like handle covers that you Velcro down, and it's got Emily on them in a massive white. So
it's kind of amazing.
So unless
We
somebody's
bump into one another at Heathrow, we both got the same.
exactly,
One on Yardley across.
but they're really good.
Well, the thing is, it's that practicality of like even
Just spotting it.
Yeah, because losing your suitcase.
Horrible.
I will say when we did, there was one dress, the SAG Awards. We had done the fittings. The dress was made in the Middle East. The first fitting was in Paris. The second was in London.
Oof.
And that was the last suitcase to come down. Like, literally, it was coming... Like, as it came out, I was like... And my heart being like, oh my God, there it is.
I know.
But I literally texted Hannah's publicist being like...
It's here.
Anique, I might have lost the case. It was like a fearful moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's the worst
We
part.
had it with the Met Gala a lot this year, the year before, and Harris Reid brought the dress over in boxes, and he was like, I was waiting for him in JFK with a driver, and he was like, box 1 here, box 2 here, and I was like...
But it can happen to anyone. There's a really
It does happen.
Well, there's a famous story of Sarah Jessica Parker lost her Philip Treacy hat for the Met Gala. It was lost in shipping, which is
It does happen.
Yeah, and like all the money in the world, I'm sure that was shipped with, but it can still.
I know. It's
lost,
terrifying.
Well, we lost one of Hannah's Christmas dresses. It went missing for an entire week, and then when it arrived back in London, miraculously, we could then track the parcel. It did like a whole tour of like.
The world.
America, like literally it went to LA and then trickled back across the states till it got to New York. Then went to
It's
Dublin.
terrifying.
And then back
It's like when people say to me, "Well, just hand carry it." It's like what the entire amount that we're wearing for an entire TV show.
So
Okay,
I just put that through a security scanner.
right.
Just like-
I do now. If we're doing something, I will take like the main outfit in my bag
And
the shoes and obviously jewellery. I always
Yeah,
hand
yeah.
carry because that's terrifying enough as it is.
Yeah.
But I
Jewellery
do
was
I do that now. I do a thing. Yeah, the joys, the anxiety, the
It's a
tears, the dramas.
Yeah.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thanks for
coming,
having
James.
me.
Thank you.